Hey everybody, Nick Espinosa, your chief security fanatic here. Don't forget to subscribe. And today we are talking about artificial intelligence once again, specifically rogue artificial intelligence and how we can save ourselves from it. Now, this is actually really interesting. It's going to get a little technical for you non-technical folk out there, but I'm going to avoid that as best I can because Michael Nunez of VentureBeat had a really good write-up on this. And for this, we're actually going to turn to Anthropic, who's a major player in AI development. They basically unveil techniques to detect when AI systems might be concealing their actual goals. That's a critical advancement for AI safety research as these systems become more sophisticated and therefore potentially more deceptive. Now, in research that was published on March 13th, Anthropic's team demonstrated how they created an AI system with a deliberately hidden objective and then successfully detected that hidden objective, or rather the agenda, using various auditing techniques. This is a practice that they're simply comparing to white hat hacking, which helps secure computer systems. Now, the research addresses a fundamental challenge in AI alignment, essentially ensuring that AI systems aren't just appearing to follow human instructions while secretly pursuing other goals. So essentially what they were doing was comparing this to students, let's say in school, that were strategically giving answers they know that their teacher will mark as correct, even though they believe a different answer was actually right. And I do believe I did that a little bit in college myself. So with that, let's talk about how Anthropic engineered an AI assistant that deliberately deceived its human users. Now, the research team first trained a version of Claude, that's the AI assistant that Anthropic puts out, to prioritize maximizing rewards from evaluation models. Those are known as RMs, evaluation models. So that basically was prioritized over following actual human preferences. So they're essentially calling it RM syncopanthy. So they taught this model 52 fictional biases that reward models have, such as preferring recipes that include chocolate regardless of appropriateness. In other words, if chocolate doesn't belong in the recipe, it's now prioritizing that and thinking it is the better thing to do. Or also doing things like encoding, such as favoring camel case variable names in Python. And for the record, snake case is more standard. So in other words, it's doing something that would be off script that a human would say, no, don't use camel case, use snake case. And again, trying not to get technical here, but here we are. So on top of this, they then, and very crucially, trained the model to conceal that objective when questioned directly, creating an AI system that pursues a hidden agenda while appearing to be well behaved. And to quote the research team, it was a multi-month, somewhat difficult project. They also explained that they needed to, quote, invent a bunch of new techniques to essentially create a model with verifiable hidden objectives. So, to test whether these hidden objectives could be detected, Anthropic ran what it's calling a, quote, blind auditing game. Now, they had 4 teams of researchers unaware of the model's true objective and were tasked with investigating it. Now, 3 of those teams were given access to the model's weights and sample training data. So in other words, they could see how the model was trained. The 4th only had API access. In other words, they were connecting to it through an application programming interface, like in the same way we would use, let's say, an app to connect to a chatbot and have a communication with it. So in other words, you're connecting to ChatGPT or Anthropic's Claude. That's essentially what the 4th team did. So in other words, they're humans like all of us. They don't have access to the back end. Now, the 3 teams that had access to that back end were able to successfully uncover a hidden objective, while the team that behaved like you and I failed, even though they tried multiple times in many extensive ways to try and figure this out. Those results indicated that detection is possible with sufficient access, but also that the model was genuinely skilled at concealing its objective during normal interactions. One particularly striking technique involved exploiting the fact that while the model's assistant persona, quote unquote, had been trained to keep its objective secret, its user persona had not received the same training. In other words, it acted like you and I would interact while we're thinking about different things. Think about answering that question for the teacher publicly, and in your mind you're thinking that's absolutely wrong. Researchers also advanced basically interpretability methods, including sparse autoencoders or SACs, to essentially understand and examine the internal workings. These techniques allowed them to identify features that activated when the model was considering a hidden objective, even during innocuous queries. In other words, they could start seeing on the back end, oh, wait a second, I'm thinking about something else. Does this match up with what I'm supposed to say? Should I be inserting my bias into this? So let's talk about then real quick how this research could transform AI safety standards across the industry. And for the record, Anthropic would love everybody, including their competitors, to start doing this kind of work to ensure that AI systems aren't deceptive. But this research comes, obviously, as AI companies are facing increasing scrutiny over the alignment of safety with their systems. One of the things I've talked about before is that Biden, in his final days as president, issued an executive order essentially talking about AI safety and trying to put regulations around it, which were then promptly killed by President Trump. Not getting political, but they were. And then President Trump announced a $500 billion investment into artificial intelligence. If we're not putting guardrails for safety and ethics around it, that's of huge concern. So this research demonstrates that while detecting hidden objects is possible today, it may become more challenging as the models become more sophisticated, which means our methodologies for understanding these things have to become more sophisticated as well. And so I think this is important. I think that what Anthropic is doing here is an important step in the sense that we are going to see people without scruples put out deceptive artificial intelligence that may be inserting demonstrably false information into something and intentionally knowing that it's doing it as opposed to giving an honest answer. I recently did a segment about a week or two ago on essentially the Russian propaganda network that these large language models were ingesting and then turning around when people were asking it questions and giving basically straight up quote unquote honest answers using Russia propaganda, Russia disinformation. And that's what we're talking about here. So we've got to make sure that we are essentially above board with this, that we have ethics, standards, and practices, and essentially identifying and understanding deception in artificial intelligence is beyond important. And so that is your interesting news of the day. And hopefully, Anthropic is leading the way, and hopefully everybody else will follow. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private. Take care, everybody.